This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander. Again, we are presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. Like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It's Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. Rate us, review us, all that other fun stuff. We are into week 3 of the NFL season. We're here. We're here. And I just noticed that, our graphics here still said week 2, but we're back. We're here. See, you didn't even need to tell the people that. Just need to show it, but control room, it's early Wednesday morning. People are tired. I understand. I understand. Control room working hard though. But as always, I am joined.
It's a scrappy group. Yeah.
Always working hard, As always though, I'm joined by my guy, Matt Russell, sports betting professional and creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcasts. Matt Russell, it's week 3 in the NFL.
Yes,
how are you doing, my dude?
Good. Smooth start to the show for me, for the control room, for everybody involved. Week 3, man, like already into it where, these double headers, these Monday Night Football double headers, it's like conceptually, I like the idea. And then I'm like, at one point, do I get to sleep? Because I'm up in the middle of the night for Canelo Crawford on Saturday and watching post fight where they're like, I can't believe why boxing isn't more popular. And I'm just like, sir, it's 2:30 in the morning East Coast time, and you're out here not sure how boxing isn't more popular? Like, what are we talking about here? And then, right, it's like, why isn't Raiders Chargers football more popular? Come on. I need some sleep here. This is week 3 and I'm already like beat up. So, hopefully I'm able to string together a sentence or two today. But yeah, kind of a rough scene considering it's middle of September and we're already deprived of some sleep.
Great fight on Saturday night, by the way. Crawford, nice little sprinkle there on Crawford. That was a lot of fun on a Saturday night. But of course, we are here for a little sprinkle in the NFL. And, the fun part here to me, as we head into week 3 action, got to remind some people who might be new to the show because, want to shout out a bunch of people who might be new to the show as, we're into our 6th year, as mentioned, doing this pod in different iterations. But with the 6th year, you still get new people tuning in. And I just like to say, I appreciate that.
Love that.
So for folks that might be new to what we do here each and every week, I'm going to give you a pick to each and every game against the spread on the NFL schedule. And then Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it is, where it could be heading into kickoff. I come out on the other side with a much more informed pick. At least that's the goal here. And I play the role of the viewer. Sometimes Matt convinces me to change my pick, and other times I foolishly don't listen, but that's the joke. That's the bit. That's the show. The goal is to win more than I lose. And you know what? Last week, 8-8. 8-8.
Okay.
We're getting back on track, though. Getting back on track, trying to be good, trying to keep things moving into week 3. And we will continue that, of course, starting on Thursday Night Football with the Dolphins in the Buffalo. 12.5-point favorites are the Buffalo Bills. That is a lot of points. Normally, I do not want to take so many points, especially not in a divisional game. But the Dolphins looked so bad again against the Patriots. And now the Dolphins coming in on a short week, heading into the gauntlet that is the Buffalo, the great city of Buffalo. Their players-only meeting didn't work. Their coach and QB are talking about communication issues, right? But your man's Money Mike is still rocking his South Beach shades. Do those shades travel to Buffalo as well? I don't know. Who knows what the sun will be like? We can only find out. Point is, Dolphins have already looked so terrible, and now you're facing the Bills, who are rolling. Yeah, I can see the Bills blowing them out by 2 touchdowns here. As long as it's less than 2 touchdowns, I can take that. I am in. No problem at all. And I just think at the end of the day, I like it. Bills minus 12.5. Here we are.
I like your initial instinct a little bit more. I think
that's fair.
Listen, who has been more down on the Miami Dolphins? than I this summer leading up to it. You and I talked about it, obviously, in the preview podcasts last week on the Patriots, week before that, very much on the Colts, right? Dolphins, down on the Dolphins has been this, like, not the one thing that we've gotten right, but like the thing we've sort of loudest gotten right, along with the Colts being pretty decent, even though we were on the Broncos last week, and probably should have won that bet. Which I don't know the ins and outs. I don't recall how you got to 8-8 as far as like the picks specifically that you had. But like so many games just came down, and this is the NFL. This is the whole point. This is why it's interesting. But so many games from a point spread perspective just come down to like the most nonsensical stuff. And that leads me to Patriots and Dolphins, where it's like the Dolphins look like they're going to win the game. They've just returned a punt for a touchdown, right? Like the vibes are super high. And it's, again, not like they played great, but like they have the lead. And then they immediately give up a kick return touchdown back the other way. 2 returns in like 10 seconds. Immediately. And, tough scene for anybody who had the under, because, 14 points that quick can be problematic. So yeah, like I've come into this being like, nay on the Dolphins, right? But that was in a universe where, as we like to talk about their estimated market rating in the betting market, they were rated sort of just kind of, around an average team, a little bit below average, right? People were still, we talked about this, I think we talked more about this offline, but people were still carrying water for the Dolphins sort of conceptually, and like watch out for the Dolphins and all that kind of thing, right? So there was still like hope for the Dolphins, at least externally, even if internally it seems like maybe they don't have much hope. So all that is to say, when this line reopens at 12.5, it's a pretty significant downgrade to what we had originally sort of set the bar for the Dolphins. What does that mean? Well, that means now the value sort of turns a little bit, and I'm looking at this Thursday game and going like, the Dolphins can do some things, right? And so when we look at like their secondary and their offensive line, and we go like, this team's pretty grim. This is going to be rough for when they're playing good teams, or when they're playing even average teams. They'll probably lose to a bunch of average teams, and they'll probably go under their win total. That's not the same conversation as, can they stay in a game with a divisional rival on a short week, where the game plans are going to be such that like you can't add anything to the game plan, right? So we know what we're going to get from Buffalo. Going to be a lot of Josh Allen, but Josh Allen's like screwing his nose back in the middle of last week's game. So like, how much Josh Allen are we going to get from like a designed run perspective? So then it's more like, okay, if it's just going to be Josh throwing the ball, that's probably going to work pretty well. But I also have some pretty significant questions about the Bills defense that, you could say, well, they answered it last week against Justin Fields and the Jets, and then Tyrod Taylor and the Jets. And I don't know that that's necessarily like enough of an answer for me. So, whether it's like, okay, maybe through the back door is kind of open here. I look back at last year's game, and like the Bills couldn't stop the Dolphins. The Dolphins couldn't stop the Bills either. And the Bills, it was the last, team to have the ball win type situation, where the Bills kicked a field goal with, I think it was like a 50-something yard field goal with like no time left on the clock to win that game. I'm not saying that's the exact same thing that's going to happen here, but until the Dolphins have a injury to Tua, they're at least capable of kind of lingering. And yeah, they didn't show up in week 1, and they did the whole like players only meeting type deal, and I guess that created sort of a better output against the Patriots, and they just kind of lost the game because, again, I don't think the Dolphins are very good. But like, we're also talking about the same point spread that like Browns Ravens got last week, and that we're going to see going forward with some of these teams that are rated at the bottom of the league. And so, until I keep saying until as if it's some sort of given, but like, unless Tua gets hurt, I don't necessarily have the Dolphins that bad when it comes to like the worst teams in the league. I just think that they're worse than anybody kind of thought that they were going to be, even with a relatively low bar coming into this season. So I think sort of a comfortable 27-17, 30-20 type win here is certainly in the offing. And like, once you start talking about money lines and you start getting past like 500, plus 500, 5-1, like plus 525 at DraftKings, as you referenced, I mean, if I told you 2 weeks ago that the Dolphins beat the Bills, like, is that the craziest thing you've ever heard in your life? Like, I don't think that it is. So, again, on a short week, wacky stuff can happen. And if the Bills are going to play defense like they did against the Ravens, then I think that there's a way in which the Miami Dolphins are able to move the football and hang in this game.
Yeah, it's a very tough one for me. And I mean, I came in pretty steadfast that I don't know if I'm going to be able to flip this one here. And I just can't, can't right now, not with Money Mike here. I think the big thing for me is I think they're just on a collision course of him getting fired very quickly here, and getting beat down in prime time might just help that happen so much faster. But still, this will be a good game. I think it'll be an interesting game. Yeah, it'll be an interesting game regardless, right? And what are we really talking about here? We're talking about how much are they going to get blown out by? Do you know what I mean? So I get it. It's all
yeah. Well, yeah.
And in the grand scheme of things,
spread, right? Like that's the point. Yeah. And the fact that the optics are so bad in Miami that like a Dolphins Bills game is being lined at 12.5, and it doesn't involve Skylar Thompson. Right? Like that is the sort of thing to take away here. And fundamentally, like, even if we hate the Dolphins, at a certain point, you just have to look back and go, well, hang on a second. Like, at what point are you willing to take the Dolphins? And like at plus 14.5, like, of course you would, because like, listen, this is the NFL. And so, 12.5, I think still has to be that number where you just go like, I get why everybody's down on the Dolphins. I am everybody that's down on the Dolphins. It's just, there's just too many points for a team that's at least functional and has guys who can break, like the Bills are going to cover Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Achane and all these guys with some of their, coverage guys. Like, I just, like, it's very dicey
for sure.
It's wide. The front door is open. Wait a minute, the Dolphins are up 14-0. Like, that's open. And there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of possible here. Again, the Thursday night not being all that great. And by the way, the Dolphins getting to play this game in Buffalo in September versus getting to do it or having to do it in December is a big deal as well.
Totally. Lots going on there, and a great way to start off week 3 of the NFL season. As we move on, though, to Sunday's action, we got the Rams at the Eagles, and this is a rematch from last year's playoffs for sure. The Rams kept it closer than most people thought, I'll say. And, they're back here getting 3.5 points on the road. And I will say the Rams offense last week kind of stalled in the first half a bit. Second half started to get things going here, and that Puka and Devontae Adams combination, I mean, there's some potential there to have that offense looking a little spicy, as mentioned, as long as they can keep Matthew Stafford upright. The Eagles, I mean, the offense hasn't really looked great, but just keep winning games. They just keep getting the job done. They just keep figuring out ways to get it done. But at more than a field goal, I'm going to take the points here and the Rams. This is a tough one here for sure, but I think I'm going to take the Rams here at the plus 3.5.
Yeah, honestly, not all that tough for me. I think the Rams are the better football team.
Ooh.
I mean, I don't know if Jalen Carter spit in Dak Prescott's face, so he didn't have to work out that night. But the Eagles are currently would be nice if you were in better shape, Jalen. And
it's not a good sign.
You're a professional you're a professional athlete. There's an expectation that you start the season on time, and whether that is getting chucked from the first game or not being in peak physical condition, certain dudes, man, just certain dudes. Let's just kind of put it that way, right? And so, if we're not psyched about the best player defensively on the Eagles, and I've got some questions about some of the other replacements that they have kind of put in here, because they didn't love the defense against the Cowboys. It worked a little bit better against the Chiefs, but again, that Chiefs team is a whole other conversation. I think right now the Eagles, having won those first 2 games somewhat by the skin of their teeth, honestly, relative to the competition, and the fact you didn't mention, specifically the false starts that they were blatantly able to get away with in Kansas City, which was an interesting twist to the tush-push conversation. So everybody got bored with the tush-push conversation and the what's the script writers, as they say. I'm over the entire thing. I'm over the play. I'm over the conversation, and I think everybody was over the conversation. And then the
Mhm.
script writers were like, "Well, what if we start allowing them to false start? Because if we do that, we can fire this whole thing up again, and nobody will notice some of the other stuff that goes on in the NFL on a
Hold on.
week-to-week
Sorry. Now
basis."
that you got me on this now, because I
Yeah,
totally forgot about, or I don't know if I just blanked it out of my mind, but the whole meeting that
right.
they had about the tush push, and reportedly like Jason
Yeah,
Kelsey was like crying in like
crying
the
his eyes
plea
out.
to
Yeah,
keep the play alive. Like
yeah,
what?
exactly.
Okay, out of sheer spite alone, if I was in that room and had a vote, I would have been like, "Nah, get this play out of here." Just off that, what are we doing
That's
here, bro?
right.
Come on, man. What are we
It's
doing?
unreal. It's the whole thing. The whole thing's unreal. So yeah, like I think the script writers have added that to the mix so that people can get fired up again about tush push conversation. But again, like do it, fine, whatever. Like that's fine. But it's not going. I can't trust that you're going to be able to um, pull the wool over people's eyes on a week-to-week basis. And
Mhm.
otherwise, the team for me doesn't look particularly great, right? Like their best play on offense last week was just throw it up and hope Devontae Smith can outbattle a Chiefs cornerback, which he did. But like,
Yeah.
if that's the best thing that we've got working for us, Saquon Barkley is getting largely kind of shut down, at least relative to sort of Saquon Barkley's, um, level of expectation. And the Rams, like, we talked about this before the season. I was like, I think I'm just going to kind of be on the Rams like every week because, in my opinion, like the Rams at healthy with, healthy Matt Stafford might be a top five team in the league. And they're finally kind of being rated like it. And I shouldn't say finally, I should say already kind of being rated like that.
Mhm.
And so it's one of those things where, okay, like I kind of thought that this should have been the case. It's why I was on them against Houston. Obviously, thought it was a tough spot last week against Tennessee, but that second half was really impressive because they
Yeah.
went, that was a game against Tennessee where, like, in the olden days, 3 years ago, Tennessee probably gets that upset, right?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
like, there's just less variance back, again, not that long ago. But the Rams came out in that second half and, like, really did it up. And so you go, okay, like, that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for when it comes to like high end teams. And now we're getting 3.5 points with a team that I think, like, again, might be the better team right now than the Eagles and still isn't being rated at the like upper echelon of the NFC, right? Like, I think there's a universe in which, like 3, 4 weeks from now, the Packers and the Rams have a higher rating than the Eagles do, which means if they played in Philadelphia, we'd be probably looking at around a pick 'em game of -1.5, -2.5, certainly not getting more than three. So, like anything when it comes to sports betting, right? You want to be early, you don't want to be
Yeah.
late. And so, fortunately, even though the Rams rating has gone up, like this went from, I think the look ahead line was 4.5, but 4.5 to 3.5 isn't some catastrophic move as
Mhm.
far as like taking us off the bet. And so we're going to go with our sort of belief here, right? That the Rams can not only hang in with the Eagles here, but potentially win this game. And 3.5 points, I think, is a pretty good deal. So we're going to hop on that as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, I totally agree with you here. And one of the things you've been championing from the start of this season, even in the early season, has been the Rams defense. And yeah, paying attention to that, really getting locked in on that has been impressive to watch. But I didn't fully comprehend the upgrade from an often injured, maybe washed Cooper Cup to Devontae Adams still having something left
Huge.
in the tank, right? And that's like massive paired on the opposite side of Puka Nakua, who apparently can just like hand off on 4th and 1 and he's going to take it out like 40 yards. Like all these things that I wasn't really aware that Puka has in his bag, but he just keeps
Yeah,
going and going. And it's like,
that's
all
right.
right, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Adams thing is interesting because it's like on reputation alone, he's like drawing the attention
Mhm,
of top corners, right? Like in week 1, it was Stingley for the
mhm.
Texans, right? Derek Stingley. And so it's like, well, if he's getting that attention, whether or not like he's still in his prime, which like he's not, but like he's better than Cooper Cup. Like you didn't have to put Derek Stingley on Cooper Cup last
No.
year, right? But Davante Adams has enough of a reputation and still is like an incredible route runner that it's like, well, we need to pay heed to him being on the field, and therefore things get even better for Puka Nakua. As far as his numbers, production, and obviously Stafford kind of looking his way and being able to make easy throws to Nakua and have Nakua be able to turn them into long, long plays. So yeah, man, like the Rams here a lot for you.
Yeah, going to be a big one for sure. That's a game I'm looking forward to. Another big game on Sunday. You got the Denver Broncos I was about to say San Diego. I caught
Wow.
myself.
Wow.
The Denver Broncos in LA to take on the Chargers. Chargers obviously on a short week after their pretty decent win on Monday night.
Mhm.
It's the Raiders. Gino, I think, left a lot on the table for
Buddy,
the Raiders, which we could get
unreal.
into a little later.
Unreal
But I
Gino
think
performance.
I would like to hope that Bo Nix and the Broncos can do a better job at taking advantage and maybe capitalizing
Yeah.
on some of these chances that Gino missed. But also the Broncos defense, I still think obviously is way better than the Raiders defense. And despite the fact that I don't know, like Bo Nix their offense hasn't shown its best yet.
Yeah.
But I
It's
feel
pretty
like
good
there's
last
still a
week. Yeah.
lot more.
Yep.
There's still a lot more to be shown there. And if I'm getting points, getting 2.5 points, I'm going to take those points with Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think we're going to see 3. It's funny, right? Like normally it's like 2 road games, or obviously first week was neutral site, but like the Chargers were on the road, right? Like they felt like it was a road trip. They went to Brazil, for God's sakes. Normally you go 2 road games, then you kind of come home and it's like, all right, the team should get a bump. Like you and I talked about the idea of just from week 1 to week 2, going from road to home last week. But this is the Chargers. And so road to home means, like Vegas, which is, an okay road venue. Like it wasn't sort of popping up. Certainly more electric on Saturday than it was on Monday night, I thought, or maybe that broadcast wasn't doing a good enough job sort of indicating the excitement in the air for the Pete Carroll era, which is a little disappointed about. But my point is that now the Chargers are going to come home to an orange crush of humanity in the stands for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
So, just on numbers alone, right? Like we don't give the Chargers much in the way of home field advantage. I kind of give them a point just on standard. But like again, if you haven't played there all season, and it's going to be louder, and you're going to have to do your own deal when it comes to cadence and snap counts and stuff. It's not, it might be minus, home field advantage instead of like plus a home field advantage for the Chargers in this game. The Broncos have been interesting, right? Like it was all defense in that first game against the Titans, right? Offense was terrible. Defense looked great. Then last week, way more about the offense than the defense, though. Like if the Colts needed a touchdown on their final drive or drives, I don't think they were going to get it. That's my faith in the Broncos. The problem is I have absolutely no faith in Will Lutz. And so whether it was Nix getting intercepted off of a deflection there on a drive that would have made the game, I believe it would have been if they'd scored a touchdown, it would have put it out of reach, but like a field goal would have made it 8.
Still would have done the job.
Right. And then the next time when Lutz misses the kick, that would have made it 5. And I'm just sitting there going like, I really do like trust the Broncos defense enough, even on the road against a team that I think is pretty good in the Colts. I trust them enough to not allow a touchdown here. And of course, Lutz just bangs one off the bar, and you're literally sitting there going like, I still with Will Lutz, Sean Payton, still. And like whether it's the week before where right at the end of the half, they allow a super long kick return that gives Tennessee 3 points when, man, if Tennessee had maybe 3 more points at some point during the game, like the Broncos might have been in real trouble in that game. Or you get the penalty, which like super soft call, had nothing to do with the absurd Colts trying to kick a 60-yarder and it not working out. You don't have Brandon Aubrey, stop trying. But they make that call, and it's just like, yeah, you're not supposed to let yourself be in that position to get that called. And as much as I think that's a soft call and it didn't have anything to do with the kick, and I could have done without the flag, definitely could have, as somebody who was on the Broncos in that game, I just go like, that's a special teams error. Like just being in that position, like touching the long snapper there is a special teams error. And so it's like, whether it's still committing to Will Lutz, whether it's that special teams error, whether it's the kicker, like how much other stuff here do we have to screw up on special teams? And I just look at it and I go, yeah, like Vance Joseph's got the defense under control. And Sean Payton thinks he's got the offense under control. And again, it was considerably better last week than it was this week. But like, is nobody paying attention to the special teams? And is that the type of thing that's going to be the ruination of what should be an otherwise really good season for Denver? Because they should be 2-0 right now. And, they probably should have had a more comfortable victory against Tennessee, but the special teams has been bad. So like, we never talk about special teams here, and it's not dissuading me from the bet. because again, I don't think we're going to get to 3 here, so like 2.5 is probably good. Where I probably like this a little bit more, and again, it's a little early in the season. I try not to be doing teasing season at the start of the year, but like you know how we do, man. Plus 2.5 with a game that could go either way here. Plus 8.5 on a 6-point teaser leg. That's really attractive. That's really attractive to me. So, yeah, like again, part of it is all right. How much do you have invested in any sort of Denver Broncos futures? If you're in the division, market on the Denver Broncos from before the season, this is a pretty significant game, right? The Chargers are already 2-0 in the division. The Broncos haven't played a division game yet, and so we can go down 2-1 and then 1-0 for the Broncos here with the head-to-head over the Chargers on the road. Like it's a pretty high leverage game from that perspective. And so I don't know that I need to be betting the plus 2.5. I much prefer kind of the idea of maybe a teaser leg. We'll try to find something else to play it with, and then certainly just understanding that a bet that we've made a couple of weeks ago or a month ago might be heavily influenced by the result of this game.
Yeah, super interesting game for sure. Divisional matchup that doesn't involve the Kansas City Chiefs, right? It's kind of weird to be talking about a big boy like AFC West game that doesn't involve the Chiefs. Crazy times, but fun times, some might say. Also, speaking of fun times, you got the Green Bay Packers heading to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Packers 8.5-point road favorites. This is going to be a lot like, I guess, a Thursday night game in which I don't want to take so many points. I really don't. And you're probably going to say, hey, or I shouldn't. Hey, I'm not going to assume what you're probably going to say. I'm just going to go.
I think you know what I'm going to say. You know what I'm going to say.
8.5 points on the road. Packers already the better team. Packers kind of, a little rest advantage as they haven't played since last Thursday, which they looked pretty good on Thursday night against the Commanders. Everyone is on the Packers bandwagon.
Bro.
I know the goal is to be ahead of the train for the flip, but I don't know if that's going to be against the Browns. I don't know. Although my question here, where I would like to start, and maybe you want to start here too, is the Ravens at home were 12-point favorites versus Cleveland, right? The Packers are 8.5-point favorites on the road. So if we do that mathematical flip, like how much is home field worth here in comparison to the Raiders versus the Packers? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's my question.
Incredibly good question. I'm glad you asked. I hadn't really thought of that comparison. That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about it. 12.5 was the spread, by and large last week between the Browns and the Ravens. 8.5 current spread right now. That's a 4-point difference, right? And so you have to flip the Browns from going on the road to going at home. You and I talk about it, right? Like home field advantage is right around 1.5 points each way, right? So that's a 3-point flip. Honestly, I'd maybe give an extra 1/4 point for the Ravens home field advantage. And honestly, I'd give an extra 1/4 point for the Browns home field advantage because, people think home field advantage is like you just win all the time. And it's like, no, you're just more likely to cover because you have a significant home field advantage. And so for the Browns, I kind of think it is like 1.75, and the Ravens, I don't hate at 1.75. So that's a 3.5-point switch. Well, the difference here is 4 points. So think about it that way, right? It basically is telling you that the Packers and Ravens are equals or a 0.5-point difference, right? Like we talk about this from like a, out of a 100 type of thing, right? Easy conversation. But I think the easier conversation is just remembering how the market views the Ravens. The Ravens were a favorite at Buffalo in week 1. The market is into the Ravens and didn't change anything, but even though they lost that game because they played so well for 55 minutes, and therefore that's why they were rated so high and the point spread was so high against Cleveland. So we're now talking about a Packers team here that before the Micah Parsons trade wasn't even the favorite in their division, became the favorite in their division somewhat on vibes based on that trade, right? It was just, we hadn't really seen it yet. And now after 2 games, they have launched themselves essentially via this point spread to Ravens territory, where they would, if the Packers played the Bills, conceptually, the Packers might be favored in Buffalo. And if you're sitting there going like, I don't really think that would be the case, I agree. Like, that's my point. my point is, like you just said, like human beings are vibing pretty hard here on the Packers, and I'm like, yeah, like I'm into the Packers too. Like we bet the Packers last week because it was like, yeah, the market has moved up because of their win against Detroit, but like we might think that they're even better than that. Like we might have them on that Eagles level. It's a similar thing to, I just mentioned the Rams, right? And I included the Packers in that, where I think the Packers and Rams might be the two best teams in the NFC when we look back on this 4, 5, 6 weeks from now. So all that is to say, like I am high on the Packers, but this line is way too high. And like this is bananas. So, I mean, again, like even the Bengals, what was it, in week 1 where it was like 5.5, and that was like obviously the full strength, like Joe Burrow Bengals. And now again, it's not just the 3-point difference, it's blowing through key numbers here, 6, 7, 8, right? All of those sorts of things. And that's before even having the conversation about the Browns. I'll sound like a weirdo here. I kind of think the Browns are good. I kind of think they're pretty.
They move the ball. They move the ball on offense.
Pretty good. Again, I talked about this last week. I watched every second of the game against the Bengals. We went, at length about it. I don't need to rehash my take on that. And then last week, yes, they lose 41-17, and you bust out the box score. And I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, it's like I needed to refresh it to like make sure that like it wasn't just halftime numbers or something like that, where it was Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry combining for like 35 yards rushing. And I'm like, well, okay, Lamar must have thrown for like 400 yards and gone absolutely ham. It's like, no, Lamar had 225 yards. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the total yards then? It's like the Browns outgained the Ravens in that game. And I'm like, okay, well, then the Browns must have turned the ball over 11 times. And I looked that up and like, no, they didn't do that either. And like, Quentin Judkins is in the lineup now, and they were like, "Oh, we're not going to play him that much." And like, he gets 10 carries for like 60 yards, and like, if you didn't think he was going to be a beast in the NFL, like maybe watch a game of college football in your life. And it's just like, yeah, of course he's going to be good. And so I just look around and I go, they have 2 rookie running backs that are both like certainly viable. One's a pretty good pass catcher, and then Judkins, has some potential to work it on the ground. And then like again, we talked about it last week. Like the pass catchers are actually pretty good. They have 2 reasonable tight ends, which allows Kevin Stefanski, who's a pretty good coach. Like we, of all the coaches that like botch stuff on a week-to-week basis, and we all kind of like make fun of him and be like, I don't know if this guy's got it figured out in year 10. Like Stefanski's kind of never on that list, right? Like to be a head coach in the NFL, it's almost like an umpire in baseball or a referee in football, where it's like if you don't notice him, he's probably doing something right. And like just because like the fact that we don't really think of Stefanski all that time. By the way, a guy who's won Coach of the Year twice already. And so I just look around and I just go, I don't know what the hell happened in that game against the Ravens, but if it is going to lead to the market sort of addressing the Ravens in the way that they're now. It's funny, they're only the 4th worst team in the league, but that's only because of performances from the Carolina Panthers and the Tennessee Titans. But like, if you're going to tell me the Browns are the 4th worst team in the league, I'm like, again, eye test and just numbers wise, like I haven't really seen that just yet. And so I'll put it this way, man, like what are the things that the Browns can do? Well, they can rush the passer. Isn't there a universe where Jordan Love is completely shook because his offensive line, which by the way, like was pretty banged up against the Commanders, but the Commanders don't have a pass rush to be able to take advantage of that? Again, you look at the defense, I'm like, they got better corners than the Commanders do. They got a better pass rush than the Commanders do. And they're playing at home, and like weird stuff always seems to happen in Cleveland. Unfortunately, the weird stuff happened to Cleveland in week 1. I think the Packers are on upset watch here potentially, let alone the 8.5. I mean, certainly when we're talking about a money line as extensive as it is, like that to me is pretty attractive. Plus 360 for a home underdog, who again, like I think is actually pretty good. I don't know if they're like league average or whatever, but they're certainly not the 4th worst team in the NFL.
It's super interesting here, and you got me here. You got me here on a
All
switch
right.
here. Because 8.5 points is a lot of points, right? And 8.5 points is a lot to be laying on the road. And I think the other part for me as well is Flacco's still involved. And as long as Flacco's still involved, I don't have a problem in taking the chance with the Browns to cover big point spreads. And I know it didn't work out against the Ravens. I get it. I understand it.
Yeah.
But certain things, as you just laid out, there's a difference between seeing the final score of the game and then actually like what happened in the game. How did that game play out? So for
sure.
that reason, I'll flip that pick there and take the Browns.
Yeah, and one last note on Flacco, right? Like being back in Cleveland with Stefanski, like they run the plays that Flacco wants to run. Whereas like
Mhm.
he's in Indianapolis last year and they think Anthony Richardson's going to be the starting quarterback. And it's like those ain't the same plays, right? Like that is a makeshift situation. And then like the Colts let Flacco go and they replace him with a mobile quarterback like Daniel Jones, right? So again, like they're running the stuff that Joe Flacco wants to run in Cleveland, which is certainly a more comforting kind of thing when you're looking for an offense that is it doesn't have a very high rating in the public opinion zone, right? Where it's like nobody thinks it's any good. I think it could be pretty decent this week.
Yeah, super interesting stuff there. And you got me to switch. You got me to switch. I love those conversations, though. I love how we get to talk it through, especially when there's things that I'm already like, wait a second, this kind of seems a little fishy. But
Yeah.
all right. I like it. I like it. We keep it going with the Cardinals. A big NFC West matchup here. Got the Cardinals in San Fran to take on the Niners. Niners 1.5 favorites at home. This is their home opener. And just in time for the beginning of the Mac Jones era. It's here. No, I'm joking. Kinda. I'm half joking.
Yeah, I was gonna say
We joked about it. We joked about it a bit before we started recording, but I mean, I might have been a little too excited watching Mac Jones for the Niners. And it's not about Brock Purdy that like, oh, he's way better than Brock Purdy. It's that you don't have to pay him as much as Brock Purdy. And then you can spread that money around. And I know Matt talked me down like it's too late. I know. But let me just be excited a little bit and let me be as fired up as Mac Jones is on the sidelines as he's making plays. Right. I love it. All right. As I try to calm myself down here, Niners 1.5 favorites at home against the Cards. I just like where the Niners are, you know, a team where although the injuries are piling up, they're still figuring out a way to get it done. Mac Jones showed like we were all over it last week in the sense of the point spread moved as soon as it was announced that Mac Jones was in for Brock Purdy. We were on the ball and able to tell you that it's not going to be some drastic drop off where the world is over. And again, that's not to say that Mac Jones isn't going to blow up, but it's just like the difference between the two guys isn't worth the points that the point spread was moving once the switch was made. Again, 2-0 despite all the injuries. As they deal with the injuries more and more, the guys that are filling in are just going to become more and more familiar. Juwan Jenkins had a big play last week for a big touchdown after looking kind of sloppy to start the season. And, you know, Ricky's still doing his thing. Like they have pieces there to still steady the ship without George Kittle. When I flip it to
100%.
the Cards, here's my thing. I feel like there's Kyler running around and I don't know what else they have other than when he's doing that, but I don't know how much he wants to do that against the Niners defense and the Fred Warner and them linebackers just running around ready to get him. I don't know. I'm not liking the Cardinals so far this season. I might just be on a Niners high. So I need you to talk me down here off the ledge here. Cause I'm ready to ride for the Niners right now. And I might be a little too hype.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, you'll remember last week, as many of us do with memories. Yeah, like we talked about it. It was an amazing game / result like circumstance, right? Because you and I talked, it was like, okay, the line is going to be 7.5, and then Purdy gets hurt, or it's announced that he's hurt, and then the line crashes down to like 4, I think it was when we did the show last week, and I'm like, I don't have it going down that far, and you're like, okay, yeah, like we're taking the 49ers, and then they announce like it's official, like Purdy's not going to play. And so the line gets knocked down even further to -3. And then even as of Sunday, like you could get some -2.5s on the 49ers. And so when the game ends as a 5-point 49ers win, it's perfect, right? Because it's like the people who jumped on the Saints +7 ended up, getting a win there. And whether they knew that, Purdy was going to be, out for this game or not, like kudos to those who, grabbed a good line at the start of the week. Like I'm always for that, even if I'm not necessarily, taking advantage of it. And then we were correct in the idea that like, nah, it's gone a little bit too far. And again, the difference between winning and losing, like long term in the NFL is acknowledging that and then having it kind of go your way in that way where it's like, yeah, there is a point where the line is just a little too low, in the same way that there's a point when the line is a little bit too high. And so the 49ers win and they cover. And so the market has to like go back to work here and be like, all right, what's the new rating for the 49ers? And so it's interesting because next week's look ahead lines are out. And I think this sort of assumption is that Purdy is going to be back and playing. And so they play Jacksonville, they host Jacksonville next week, right? And the line is -3 for the 49ers next week. And that puts the 49ers around like a 58 when it comes to their market rating, which is still a little low to where they were before the season started, right? 11.5 win total, whatever it was, and like favorites on the road against Seattle. So like, I think that's still kind of a little bit low. And it's kind of really interesting to me because 58 right now, if you said like that would be the rating for the 49ers this week, that would put this line at 2.5. So it's not a huge upgrade next week from Jones back to Purdy, theoretically. So I guess my point to all of this is that like the Mac Jones rating from last week, that was super, super low. It was like in the low 40s, right? Like it would have to be for you to be only 3-point favorites against New Orleans. It's a pretty big jump back up right now to get to this 1.5, because, to get to 1.5, right? I said 2.5 was 58. I'd pop in sort of 56 here for the 49ers rating, and it probably comes up with, as I'm scanning it real quickly, -2. So, like it's, so let's say they're a 55. So again, the market went to, sort of war last week with them being rated in the low 40s. And now after beating the Saints, it's back up to the mid 50s. I'm not super comfortable with just being like, all right, all is well. Like, we're all just good here, because the Cardinals historically, even when things were going really, really well in San Francisco, and Kyler Murray have been problematic for the 49ers, right? Like you can go back into your fan memory and be like, man, we lost that game at home to the Cardinals, and like that was pretty brutal, and so on and so forth. Again, you're watching the Cardinals game last week, and all of a sudden, like the Panthers have the ball and a theoretical chance of winning that game, which like came out of nowhere. So it's a little like Ravens Bills, where you have to go like, shouldn't the Cardinals kind of be rated more about what they did in that first 50 to 55 minutes? Or is it, oh man, the Cardinals didn't cover, therefore they have to be downgraded, right? So, it's like a Survivor. It's okay, you might have taken the Cardinals, but if you didn't take the Cardinals last week, did the Cardinals prove to you that they're trustworthy in Survivor? I don't, there's not really an answer for that, right? Because it's like, yeah, well, they took a 3-touchdown lead. That was certainly more cozy than like the Cowboys, for example.
Oh, we'll get
but there. They also sort of, it also got really dicey towards the end here. So, I don't necessarily have a pick. I'm not necessarily going to talk you out of your team here. It's just worth kind of knowing how poorly the 49ers ended up being rated last week since the last time we spoke, which was, worse than the last time we spoke. And then now all of a sudden, like, let's put it this way, right? Using the current rating, if you went back and we're like, and this is what the rating is, they'd be 6-point favorites in New Orleans last week. That wouldn't have been enough for covering, right? Like that. So, again, they've given them the boost to like a 5-point win, and now it's kind of getting to a 6-point win, and it's like, well, that's further than it necessarily was. And like, listen, you can go through that game and be like, maybe they were kind of lucky to cover that game, maybe they weren't. Who knows? It's the NFL, right? All of these teams, frankly, all of these teams are lucky to cover. Right? It's like 80% of the time. It's just like, did you cover? Yes, you were probably lucky, right? Just because that's how the balls bounce, the refs call this, that, or whatever. They miss stuff, they make stuff up. It's all just complete chaos, and it's super, super fun, except for when it literally all goes against you sometimes, which might turn a 12-4 week into an 8-8 week on your side of things. So who knows, right? But yeah, all that is to say, do whatever you want to do with this game.
No, I got you. Super interesting matchup, but maybe not as interesting as last week's matchup involving our next team, the Dallas Cowboys, who are in a pick'em game now against the Chicago Bears. And the Cowboys, what a sweat that was, having the Cowboys in Survivor last week against the Giants. OT dub, in which, the one thing I did learn was that Dak with CeeDee Lamb and Pickens, as you did mention earlier, right? That offensive trio can be a problem. I don't think Caleb can keep pace here, and that's the reason I'm kind of looking at this game and being like, it's a pick 'em. I know the line has moved a little because I feel as if the Bears were favored, maybe at like a 1.5 last night or whenever I first looked at the lines, as opposed to this morning, Wednesday morning, when now making said pick. But either way, Cowboys money line for me would be the bet here, because I also think in these very close games, you know what else matters? Kickers. And having a kicker in which you're settling for 60 yarders.
Unreal.
Just
unreal.
Absolute
unreal
insanity. Right? So I'm on the Cowboys here against the Bears, which the Bears operation still looks faulty. Caleb Williams, I don't know what's going on there, but he's still not ready for the fun police. I'm on the Cowboys. I think Dak will put up some points here. And listen, you've brought me to, the altar of Dak Prescott. And as long as he's healthy with this trio, like Pickens, he's a number one receiver. CeeDee Lamb, a number one receiver. Do you know what I mean? And you put those two together with the more than functioning QB.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think Caleb can keep up points wise. Give me the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go high end too for Pickens, just because I'm never really sure what he's up to out there. Whereas when they throw it to Lamb, I'm like, Lamb's going to catch this ball, even if he doesn't necessarily catch the ball.
Totally fair.
Just a wild scene in Dallas, an incredible settle for that field goal. And listen, if you watched the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders documentary on Netflix, you know that settling is just pervasive in that organization. If that's a deep pull for
I've not seen the doc, but I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'll say
there's just some unbelievable matchups as far as the cheerleaders and their significant others in that game or in that show. I'm not going to get in your way here. I still got more work to do as far as this is concerned. I'll put it this way, right? Like the Cowboys, we talked about the Cowboys being an above average team as long as Dak Prescott is involved. And so they were rated kind of at about a 51, for example, literally a touch above average for that game last week. And the Giants had gotten downgraded off of a pretty paltry performance against Washington. And so that's a classic buy low, sell high. Now we were only involved from a just win baby situation from Survivor because of just strategery. And so you also don't bet against yourself. And so, I didn't end up taking the Giants plus the points, but that would have been kind of a textbook scenario to do so. So it's kind of interesting that they won the game. Of course they didn't cover, but they now are rated as a 46 out of 100 here, because what are the Bears doing, right? The Bears have to be downgraded for their performance. They got their doors blown off by the Lions last week. Another thing that, by the way, we had correct. And so, the reason to like the Cowboys is that if we are steadfast in our concept of the Cowboys being an above average team as long as Dak Prescott, or at least an average team as long as Dak Prescott's at the helm, then that's a perfectly viable reason to bet on the Cowboys. It's just after watching that defensive performance last week, I'm just if there's ever a scenario where Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, remember I was on a short week in Detroit, this isn't going to be the scenario where it clicks. If there's ever a scenario where it's just wide open dudes scampering through the secondary at home in Chicago, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, things of that nature, it's going to be against this Cowboys defense that just looked lost out there and just non-communicative. The ball skills were horrendous. Trey Diggs was getting absolutely schooled by Malik Neighbors. And Adunze was so good last week against the Lions, where we need to start having conversations about him. Rookie year, that was a mess last year in Chicago. I'm going to beat him up about that. He was awesome at Washington, right? There's a reason that he was drafted the way that he was. So he might be that dude. And so now you've got another scenario where just throw it to Rome and he's probably going to be open, because God, this Cowboys defense was just absolutely atrocious last week. So again, that the defense alone might be the thing that downgrades the Cowboys appropriately below kind of an average team, which is fine because between their defense and the Joe Burrow injury, I got Dak Prescott to lead the league in passing yards. Bats that
Not
are
Russell
looking.
Wilson, no.
Look, yeah, I think he's going to catch Russell Wilson. Knock on wood. But yeah, like over the course of the next 18 weeks, I don't know what the numbers are on what he is now to lead the league in passing, like if those odds have been updated. But I'm going to sort of filibuster here and maybe look for that when you're talking about the next game.
Yeah. So the one thing though, I'll give you some time here on this Cowboys thing, because the one thing that was very interesting to me, just watching them continue, like as soon as you're watching that game and thinking, okay, no, the Cowboys got it, it's like next play, deep bomb right down the middle. And it's like, who, like, I'm sure very basic defense, there's like a last guy back, like don't let the guy behind you. And it's just like play after play getting burned deep. And it's like, what are you guys doing? It made no sense to me. It was actually comical, if not for the fact that it was our survivor pick. You know what I mean?
That
was the type of thing.
I would hysterically laughing if I wasn't like ready to cry about how ridiculous it was. Dak Prescott, the favorite, by the way, at plus 600 to lead the league in passing yards. Currently, honestly, not the worst bet anybody's ever made at that point, but we got a better number from before the season. So we're going to be cheering that on when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys going forward.
Yeah, this is I dare you, Caleb. You got to show something against this Dallas defense here. Got to say that much.
Yeah.
Next up, especially speaking of, I should say, show me something. You got the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers in New England to take on the Patriots. The Steelers 1.5 favorites in New England. Steelers are super confusing to me. Their defense hasn't really looked good. Rodgers hasn't really looked good. But yet, last week's game, it was two huge mistakes that really cost them that game. The interception in the end zone. And then, of course, your special teams guy not knowing the rules of like the whole storyline, special teams wise, of the entire offseason. Like you figure how many meetings they've had about what the rules are for the dynamic kickoff. And dude's just like, just jogging off the field. It's like insane.
The purest definition of rookie mistake. The purest definition of rookie mistake.
That guy would get benched forever. Like you might get cut for that. If you're a special teamer and that's what you do, anyways.
But that's the thing with the new kickoff, right? Where you have your good running back there. You have your first round, second round running back, right? Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, right? Who was cool because he didn't have to change his colors. He might have to change his colors after that fiasco because, sorry, go ahead.
Just horrible. No. Yeah. Just horrible by the Steelers. But to the point being, I don't know what to make of the Pittsburgh Steelers so far. And as long as their defense is still playing that badly and un-Steeler-like, it's going to be a struggle. The thing is, the Pats aren't also that good, right? The Pats defense is pretty bad. Their special teams was super eventful last week as well. Talk about missing 2 extra points. You mentioned that earlier. I don't know. The Steelers might just be better here, and that's why I'm going to take the Steelers on the road, but I'm not confident about that. Like, I can't say I'm confident about anything between these two teams other than it might just be eventful with a lot of just bleepery going on.
Totally. This is an odd line for me, man, because like the Patriots were 1.5 point favorites in the look ahead line, which again is just a reflection of their rating going into last week, which, obviously they were in Miami last week. That was, 2.5 point favorites, thought that was really more of a pick'em or should have been more of a pick'em. And it ended up being like the pick'emiest game that ever pick'em. So the Steelers are getting still a pretty fair amount of credit by being a road favorite here, right? And this is kind of an obscure one, right? But when I do like research when it comes to like awards and stuff like that, I look back at kind of like the history of different awards and how guys win them. And TJ Watt won the Defensive Player of the Year a few years ago, and he's kind of the only one that won it on a defense that wasn't very good from like a points allowed, like general metrics kind of standpoint, right? It was like, oh yeah, this guy's on the defense that was 4th, and this guy's like on the defense that was 3rd or 1st or 5th or whatever. And then you get to like TJ Watt that year, and it was like, yeah, the Steelers are like 21st. or something like that. Like, it's just a massive outlier because that's how awesome TJ Watt was, that like it wasn't a recognition of a good defense. It was a recognition of one guy just balling his face off, right? And so like
Yeah.
last year, for example, right? Surtain last year was more of like, yeah, he's the best defender on this team, and like we should give him some credit for that. So my point is like we keep talking about the Steelers defense in a way that it's supposed to strike fear in hearts, and then we're disappointed when they give up 30 points to Justin Fields. And then we're disappointed when like they don't get to Sam Darnold as a relatively statuesque, certainly a drop back quarterback last week. And they don't sort of put him in a blender, torture chamber, et cetera, et cetera. So like while you're right, where there was a bunch of like weird stuff that happened that allowed the Seahawks to win that game and do so relatively comfortably in the end, the reasons to like the Steelers are still very murky, right? The idea that the defense is good is not really proven just yet. And the idea that the offense is good is maybe a lot more to do with like the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, like venom towards the Jets or whatever. And by the way, like the Patriots, again, different, coaching staff, etc., but whatever. Like they faced Aaron Rodgers when he was with the Jets. Like I'm pretty sure. And so it's like, I don't know that they're all scared of Aaron Rodgers or that they're scared of DK Metcalf or they scared of anything going on with the Steelers there. So I just look at it, and then from a market standpoint, like the Steelers still rated above average. Put it this way, right? If you're above average, you're going to need to be used in Survivor at some point this season. You dying to use the Steelers in Survivor this season? Against anybody? You know what I mean? Like, obviously we're, who knows what's going to happen here with like the Panthers and some of the teams that we think are bad and how bad could they be? And listen, I don't even think the Steelers play the Panthers. I don't have the Steelers schedule right in front of me. But my point is like, that seems a little too high, just kind of on where we've sort of felt like the Steelers should be. Put it this way, right? Like, I think the Patriots are probably better than the Jets. And a 1.5 point spread is pretty damn close to the 2.5 point spread that the Steelers were in New York that first week. So, yeah, I think, it hasn't been pretty for the Patriots necessarily, but I think this is a winnable game for them. And of course, it's only a 1.5 point spread. That's kind of a Mr. Obvious type thing. But, more just has to do with the idea that we're getting plus money and, on the money line here in a game that, you could tell me by the end of the season or 3 weeks from now that the Patriots should have been a 2.5 point favorite here instead of a 1.5 point underdog.
Yeah, it's going to be a super interesting matchup either way. And we want to see Aaron Rodgers, like how long even this version of Aaron Rodgers lasts, which isn't that good, but we do know that the tail off is coming no matter where he's at right now, right? So that'll be interesting to see how long that takes. We keep it going here. The Jets at the Bucs. Bucs at home, 7-point favorites. This, I don't like laying 7 points, but I'd rather lay 7 than 7.5, I'll say. And that's more based on the Jets. My Baker Chronicles continue, whether I'm betting on Baker or betting against Baker, just never seems to work out for me quite well. And that Monday nighter where you're against Baker and all you would want is the Texans to make a tackle. Just make a tackle, and they can't do it. But Baker made the plays. They won the game. And Baker, I end up on the wrong side of Baker Mayfield yet again. But this one's about the Jets. And the Jets tricked me into taking them against the Bills last week. And you sit there watching that game, and you're just like, oh, no, they're the Jets still. They are the Jets. Justin Fields is in concussion protocol. Don't know where he stands heading into this week yet. Is there a backup Tyrod Taylor? Do I have that right?
That's right. That is correct.
Yeah.
Critical.
Give me the Bucs. I'll lay a touchdown here with the Bucs. Respectfully to Tyrod Taylor. And
respectfully to the veteran nature of your position. Yeah, it's like you hired Tyrod Taylor. I don't know if we ever decided that over the course of the 15 years or whatever that he's been in the league. Sure. right? Like, remember when he like got his like spleen busted and Justin Herbert got to play, and they weren't actually going to start
What was
Justin
that?
Herbert that first year in
They
LA?
like
When
gave him an injection or something. Like they almost killed him.
yeah,
No, like
yeah,
something messed up happened like right
yeah.
before the game.
I believe there was a lawsuit. Like, I think that happened.
Crazy.
So yeah, like that, and even then we were like, I don't know if Terod Taylor's the answer. And it's like that was the start of Justin Herbert's career. And like people have been back and forth 12 million times on Justin Herbert since then. So like it was a while ago. My point is that when you hire Justin Fields to be your mercenary quarterback this year, you do so going, all right, our offense is going to run these plays
Mhm.
because Justin, it's kind of like the Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco thing that we were talking about, right? And then so you go, okay, well, we need a backup quarterback. All right, so let's try to find somebody with like similar style, athleticism, etc., to Justin Fields. And they're like looking around and they go like, Rod Taylor is the guy that we have to mirror Justin Fields. And it's like, that's not it. That is not the guy who's going to be able to run the stuff that Justin Fields is capable of running, quite literally running. And so going to be a pretty big deal on whether it's Justin Fields or whether it's Terod Taylor, because I think if it's Fields, we then get into a very more reasonable argument about like super short week, jump and hug road game for the Buccaneers. And as much as we've talked about the idea of going from road to home, this is the Bucs' first home game. There's also a concept, it's a little more sort of prevalent in the NHL, where you go on a long road trip and then you come back in your first home game. You're kind of like not as into it as the
Mhm.
market thinks that you are, because you're just happy to be home. And you kind of, take the kind of, foot off the gas pedal, or whatever cliche you want to use. So I think there's a way in which we get that version. We thought it was going to be last week, right? Where we're like jump and hug game from the Bucs. By the way, if you've had 2 jump and hug games already this season, like you're also testing, everybody's general patience and like how good you might be. But the reason that we were on Houston is like, okay, I think they're going to be able to score just enough here. The defense is going to be able to take advantage of a banged up offensive line for the Buccaneers. By the way, that Buccaneers offensive line only got more banged up. They basically stopped scoring after the first 2 drives. I believe it was the first 2 drives that they scored touchdowns until Henry 2020202020. I don't believe that's how you pronounce it. Was unable, and you know what? I'll learn how to pronounce your name if you make a bleeping tackle, blows not just 1 but 2 tackles on trying to be a superhero knockout artist instead of just breaking down and wrapping up, which I
Yeah.
believe is the main criteria for a linebacker. So when we talk about the vaunted Texans defense, let's just remember that they have a linebacker who just isn't interested in making solid, important, game clinching plays, by the way. So, so
Yeah.
all I had to say, like, if Fields plays and the Buccaneers had lost that game, what is this line, and how more sort of into it are we for betting the Jets?
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
And it's like, if that's the thin line, then maybe laying 7 points with the Buccaneers isn't a particularly good idea, right? And so, like, you can make whatever decision you want as of now. I'm just saying, like, I'm going to need to know what the deal
For
is
sure.
here with the quarterback situation, right? And so, like, that is the primary thing here. But, like, part of it is because I want to bet on the Jets. I just don't want to do it with Taylor. And I also want as many points as I can get as possible. And when we're talking about a key number of 7,
Mhm.
locking up 7 is not that bad when we look at it and we go, well, the look ahead line for last week was 7.5. Maybe we can get to 7.5 here. It should be a lot higher if Taylor plays, and then maybe I end up getting in on Taylor if this thing goes like something crazy like 10.5. So, obviously a lot of moving parts here, but just like keep your mind open to the concept of sitting there on Sunday and going, this isn't the Baker Mayfield that I saw on Monday night, which, by the way, like, my man's done a lot of commercials in his time. He knows where the cameras are. It's Monday Night Football. He's diving around, he's leaping around. Imagine waking up on Tuesday in the dead of night or off the airplane and feeling the way that Baker Mayfield must have felt after taking some of the hits that Baker Mayfield took. Now you're going to play a 1 o'clock game against the Jets, a game that you're supposed to win. Your offensive line's banged up. It's just, I don't want to be laying points into that. But again, I don't want to do it with Tyrod Taylor either. So
Yeah, here's my official pick, and I'll reaffirm this, or I'll remember. I should set an alarm to reaffirm this on the social media, especially Twitter. Make sure you follow the Twitter account, by the way. But yeah, officially key thing here for this game. Know who the starting quarterback is for the Jets, and just know that if Tyrod Taylor is involved, I am not really involved on the New York Jets. But again, right now the pick is Tampa Bay -7. I'm okay with taking Tampa Bay at the 7. If it starts moving, if we start finding out some more info, we shall readjust. But stay tuned to the Twitter because, that's where we'll get more information. Speaking of more information, I can get you some more information on our next game, which is the Colts at the Titans, pardon me. Colts 4.5-point favorites on the road in Tennessee. So I guess the Colts are good. I guess that's supposed to be my takeaway here. Looking at this line,
we were just right. I guess. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Right? I don't know if I'm ready to like lay 4.5 points on the road with the Colts yet, but maybe I just need more convincing. I don't know. But more than a field goal on the road, Cam Ward and the Titans got to be considered anyone. Like they're hovering around that anyone line for sure. Danny Dimes is a great story. I just don't know if I'm ready to lay 4.5 points on the road yet with the Colts. And I'm not going to say with Danny Dimes, because if you're paying attention to what this team's doing, it's obviously apparent that this team is a lot more than what Daniel Jones is doing. He's fitting in great. He's fitting in well.
Doing work.
You mentioned Jonathan Taylor. They got a great defense. There's lots going on in Indy that makes them a good team. I'm going to be on the points with the Tennessee Titans at the 4.5, but I'm not confident about it. I mean, why would I be confident in the Titans?
I think if you went back to the history of the show and like you tuned in to week 3, I swear I remember saying this last year, and maybe I've said it every year. We call week 2 like overreaction week. But it really might be week 3, because the idea that like 2 games have happened and like that's like officially where every team just is.
I forgot to make a note of something. That I should have wrote down. Wasn't it last season where the first 2 weeks of the year, Derek Carr and the Saints had like the greatest offense ever? And it was like, wait, what? The Saints are good? Derek Carr's the man? Wasn't that a thing? Was that last year?
Yeah, it was, because we ripped through the Cowboys like he was Russell Wilson, or Russell Wilson ripped through him like Derek Carr. Like, this is the universe that we live in week 2 and week 1 and week 2, right? And it's like, well, like they played 2 games already. Like, you're an NBA guy, right? Like, I dabble in the NHL. Imagine after 2 games we started making like drastic pronouncements about the LA Lakers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Oh wait, those 2 teams, people do. But every other team, imagine if we made those sort of drastic pronouncements. That's every team in the NFL, right? Every team who's lost 2 games is terrible. Every team's won 2 great teams is a Super Bowl contender, and so on and so forth. So again, this is just fundamentally the Titans before the season were lined and rated a certain way. Their current rating of 31 out of 100 is at the absolute like bottom of their range, right? So I sort of say like, it's put it this way. If you started the season rated as a 37 or 38, my range for you is between 30 and 45. Some days you're going to look like a 45. Some days you're going to look like a 31. You're never going to look like a 60. Right. And some stuff really has to go wrong if you're going to look like a 20, because that's like historically bad. Right. But fundamentally, you're going to be in that range. And so knowing that a team is going to play in that range, if they're rated like the Titans at 31, well, that's the back half of that range. And like they might play at a 31, but like there's also pretty significant real estate there for them to play at a 41 or a 42, which isn't exactly like lighting the world on fire, but when they're 4.5-point home underdogs to a team that, by the way, before the season started, was rated around like a 43, which means their range would be 35 to 50. Their current rating with this point spread, Sheldon, 53. They have blown by their range, right? So they have blown through the top end of their range, and the Titans are at the absolute bottom of their range. So again, maybe we were right. And the weird thing about week 3, especially when we're right about a lot of teams in week 1 and week 2, whether or not they necessarily cover, but like the Colts certainly qualify as a team we were right about. We are sitting in a position where we then go, we were so right that their new average performance, which is what a rating is
Yeah.
53. And like the answer to that is like, yeah, maybe. But like we also spent the entire summer of just money flowing into markets like win totals and division markets, like to win the division markets. And of course, week 1 and any look ahead lines. And like nobody had the Colts as an above average team. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we kind of did, but nobody else had the Colts as an above average team. So you just go, yeah, I have to take the Titans here. I have to grab the 4.5 points. It's just buy low, sell high, standard market stuff. And then just see kind of what happens. You throw in the jump and hug element from last week. And the Titans, by the way, leading at halftime against the Rams. Again, we just talked about the Rams being a team that we think is pretty damn good. So, yeah, like, I think it's probably not so bad in Tennessee. And put it this way, even if it is this good for the Colts, the Titans element in all of this makes them a worthy bet, right? Anything better than what we've seen so far, or what we perceived so far, I think is more important. And the Titans should be able to stay inside this number. But I thought they were going to stay inside the number last week when they were leading by 3 points at halftime against the Rams. So who the hell knows?
Who knows indeed. And who knows about our next game as the Texans are in Jacksonville to take on the Jags. Jags laying 1.5 at home. Both of these teams looked super shaky. Texans, though, on a short week. Jacksonville, I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on there. Bad vibes between the coach and the QB. The star receivers getting called out for maybe ducking the smoke, going across the middle on some passes. Just not good vibes in Jacksonville. On the flip side, the Texans and CJ Stroud, that was a tough watch on national TV on a Monday night.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud, I mean, I saw us. Actually, I'm not going to say that on this pod, but CJ Stroud, I don't know what's going on with CJ Stroud right now, but let's just say a lot of things have changed over the last couple of years, and there might be a glaring reason for that, which again, I'm not going to say on this platform.
Dark web Googling coming in hot here for everybody.
But with that said, if there's a unit that I am confident in, it would be the Texans defense, which I still think did everything possible to give the offense a chance to win that game. And, with that, just what I mentioned on the Jags offensive side of things, I think that the Texans defense can do a job here. And that's why I'm on the Texans plus 1.5.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I'm not going to advocate for the Jags because I think you're right. I think, I've been down on the Jags. My whole thing with the Jags is, again, you get into the summer loop of everybody repeating the same thing over and over again. And people talking about Liam Cohen as if it was just fait accompli, that he's some sort of offensive god. And then that's just it, right? And it's like, yeah, I mean, this is a guy who's hopped from team to team. Like he went to Kentucky, the University of, like multiple times, and you're like, that's kind of odd. And since when was Kentucky like lighting up the show? And it's like, well, he also spent time at the Rams, and it's like, okay, a lot of dudes spend time at the Rams. Some are good, some are bad. And then we just talked about Baker Mayfield and being like, well, Dave Canales, isn't exactly lighting it up with Bryce Young. So like maybe it's just Baker Mayfield that's pretty good. He only was the first overall pick in the draft, right? It's like it's not like he's some vagabond or whatever. And so you just go like, all right, well, you're gonna keep telling me about Liam Cohen in the same way you kept telling me about Doug Peterson was gonna unlock Trevor Lawrence. And the reality is, or at least what I'm seeing, is that the receivers don't trust Trevor Lawrence not to get them killed. Which is like problematic in the NFL. And like, so, and Cohen, I think, is probably going to bat for Brian Thomas and being like, well, he had a wrist injury. And it's like, I'm sorry, a wrist injury that was not reported. Like we saw that last year with, who was it? Like Tampa Bay or somebody, or like Atlanta playing Tampa Bay. And they didn't report it. It was a Bijan Robinson injury. And then the Falcons got like fined up the nose for that. And it's like, that's not legal. You can't not tell us about an injury. So you're either about to spend your boy Shad Khan's money here getting fined, or you're going to bat for Brian Thomas and making this up, in which case you're probably still going to have to pay a fine. So
Yeah.
it's just all like, it's just not happening. And then, I don't know if you and I necessarily talked about this as far as the preseason shows, but like, I didn't love the Travis Hunter draft pick. It didn't really make sense to me. If you're drafting
Yeah.
somebody in the first round, period, or second or third or fourth or fifth overall, I'm going to need to know that you're playing a position at a quality level that like is better than a veteran, and you're replacing that player and doing so like in a good way.
Yeah.
The roster, there's 55 or 53 professionals on an NFL team. You can't play two positions. You can't do it. I'm sorry, man. You can do it in the Big 12. You can't do it in the NFL. This is like when like there's a really good college football team and it's like, can Alabama beat the Saints? And it's like, no. They're all professionals. Go watch a season of Hard Knocks, fall in love with some guy who's like an awesome football player, and then in the final episode of Hard Knocks, they're like, no, sorry, he's cut. And we never hear from him again because he wasn't that good. And he was the best guy on his college team. And he was the best guy that ever came from his town. And so, like, you burned a top pick on a guy who, like, might be a pretty good receiver. He, like, might be a decent cornerback. Unless he picks one and is awesome at that, which is, by the way, possible. It's within the realm of possibility. It's just not what he was in college. He wasn't the best receiver in college football last year. He wasn't the best corner in college football last year. So you picked a guy who was very good at both, but like you're trying to get him to play both. So again, organizationally, we're being told that Liam Cohen is an offensive genius. We're being told that Trevor Lawrence has got the, is going to be back to where he was at Clemson. By the way, when he was at Clemson, he was surrounded by what? Players who were better than the opposing players on the other team, right up until the point where he wasn't. The national title game against LSU, where LSU and Joe Burrow and company absolutely hammered them. So, again, like we're just being fed this bill of goods with the Jacksonville Jaguars. When you look at the organization, you go like, I don't know that these guys are doing anything right necessarily, right? And so I just like, get back to the point of the pick, Matt. I don't, I can't argue with you here, even though we just watched the Texans, and I'm also on record by a bitter tweet as saying that CJ Stroud might stink. I don't think he's very good. Right? So it's like, let's just go to war with CJ Stroud on the road here. Like the Texans do have a pretty good record over the Jags, in the CJ Stroud quote unquote era here. But again, part of that is because the Jags organization has been god awful. And again, we haven't necessarily seen anything here that would prove that like it's the new era of Jags football, Duval and whatnot. So like I don't all that is to say, I don't know, man. Pick whoever you want to pick. No, I like the Texans.
Yeah, I'm on the Texans. As I said, the only unit here I trust is the defense, and defense travels, and I can rely on at least a turnover or two from Trevor Lawrence and company as they can't seem to get their act together. And the Travis Hunter thing is so interesting, right? Because clearly is such a pick based off vibes. And we want headlines, and we're picking the Shohei Ohtani.
And we already have a quarterback. We already have a quarterback. So like we're good there. We can kind of get a little loose with our pick. And it's like, you mean the same like people who are drafting, or the same organization that drafted a guy at number 1, 2 or 3 years ago, who like we haven't heard be an impact player since,
Insane.
Like Walker. No, take it and go.
Speaking of taking it and go, we'll go to the New Orleans Saints, who are in Seattle, take on the Seahawks. Seahawks 7.5-point favorites. I'll continue to say Spencer Rattler isn't as bad as I thought. The Saints aren't good, but they're fighting. They're scrappy. They're not good, but they're a scrappy bad team, if that makes sense. The Seahawks defense is solid, but 7.5 points is just a little too much for me here. I think, I don't know if I can lay 7.5 points. As I'm saying, Spencer Rattler might start qualifying himself as just anyone. Right?
The
For sure. The 7.5 points here, the Niners were 4.5-point favorites, but in New Orleans. Right. So we'll flip this road to home. Is that worth the 3 points? This is going to be my question for you here. It's an interesting one, but I'm on New Orleans plus 7.5.
Yeah, that's tricky because, right, the 49ers are road favorites against Seattle. in week 1,
Yes.
which adds another sort of like triangle to the whole thing, right?
What's the meme with the like mathematician, all the
Yeah, we do Beautiful Mind thing. There's a Charlie Day, Always
Yeah,
Sunny meme. Like any one of there's the Zach Galifianakis,
yes.
doing the math thing, and I guess that's a Beautiful Mind reference. Anyway, uh, yeah, I don't want to lay 7.5 either, but like you mentioned, just the idea of home to road here, right? So
Mhm.
it's one thing to be like, oh, Spencer Rattler, not the worst I've ever seen, and it's like, yeah, they still lost 2 games at home,
And didn't
but
cover.
and didn't cover either one by an eyelash, by the way. So, at least part of the whole like rating thing, right? And when a team, plays 2 games or 11 games or whatever, and they're constantly close to the number, is that
Mhm.
at least we can say to ourselves, like, we have a pretty good handle on what their
Mhm.
rating is because they are rated like they're supposed to lose by 6.5 points against the Cardinals, and they lost by 7, and they probably should have lost by less.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of perfect, right? From a market perspective. Saints, it's like, well, they were 7 if it was Brock Purdy, it's 3 if it's Mac Jones, and they lose by 5. And you're like, yeah, I think that's probably pretty perfect too. So when you then go, okay, what does the point spread have to be here against a Seattle team that just won on the road against Pittsburgh and, played a could go either way game against the 49ers, by the way, like pretty accurate line in all of that too. And you go like, yeah, it all kind of comes out to about 7.5. So like there isn't really a numbers angle to this where you're like, nope, too high, because these 2
Mhm.
teams have been like rated pretty accurately, but Seattle being like pretty much a dead nuts even average team, and New Orleans being sort of as low as they're sort of appropriately able to be. So yeah, I mean, psychologically you go, I don't want to lay 7.5 points with Sam Darnold, but I will say this: when it comes to this game, there might be another element to this game as far as betting or betting adjacent type scenarios
Okay.
that you might want to check out. Well, I'll just leave it at that. Just leave it at that. Do
I'm
my own
confused.
tease. I'm doing my own dark web tease.
Oh, so that is that hold on, I'm gonna put this up here. Is that where that comes in? Can you see that?
Yep, yep. You
Okay,
can,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
check out
For
the
those of us listening, yeah,
Mhm.
please translate for those people who might be listening and cannot see the graphic that just popped up on the screen here.
At Emrys Authentic on Twitter. Check it out.
That, my friends, is what we call a tease in the business, in the business. But yeah, it's a tough game for sure. I will be on Spencer Rattler and the plus 7.5 points in this one. Yeah, again, anytime the stuff we talk about all the time, right? The key number of 7 versus 7.5. And yeah, I like it when a team's a little more spicy here, trying to cover over a field goal. You know, Spencer's been playing a little bit better. I'm
It's
okay to roll with that.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I just go like on the road, Seattle
It's
again. Like
tough.
they weren't a very good home team last year, and again, maybe it has not that doesn't translate into a cover. But if you were ever like, I don't, I think Spencer Rattler's bad. There's a possibility, let's put it this way, that against a pretty good Seahawks defense so far, in a loud crowd environment, that you're sitting there
Mhm.
going like, I think the old Spencer Rattler might be back.
Shows up. Yeah.
And
Fair
by the
enough.
way, if and when that happens, like,
Yeah, yeah,
let's
yeah.
not throw Spencer Rattler out with the
No.
bathwater. Let's just acknowledge that maybe this wasn't the perfect time to be pro Spencer Rattler, given what he may have to face this coming week. And by the way, he's got the Bills next week on the road too, so it could be a rough scene for your guys Spence for the next couple.
Just know, folks, no one is out here telling you to lay this month's rent on Spencer Rattler and the Saints.
No,
Just putting that
fair.
out there. Um, let's move on though, because I think we gave Spencer Rattler enough time here, but a lot of time
Not
for
enough.
Spencer
Not
Rattler.
enough for
Not
Spencer
even like
Rattler.
this. Yeah, not even the Saints podcast. Whoever's doing the Saints
Yeah.
podcast is spending that much time talking about Spencer Rattler. But anyways, Bengals at Vikings. Vikings 3-point home favorites here. This could be a battle of the backups. We know Joe Burrow is
Certainly
out for
is.
3 months with the turf toe. Jake Browning is in. he did a solid job last week. I mean, he held the fort. You know, they got a win. They covered. There's a lot of interesting stuff that led to that cover, but hey, win's a win. They'll take that. Vikings did not look good. JJ McCarthy looked brutal. And now he's hurt. So a lot going on here. Carson Wentz's music is being played. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Carson Wentz coming out of the tunnel.
That's right.
All right. Didn't know he was still didn't know we were still doing Carson Wentz in the year 2025, but here we are. Either way, I'm taking the points, especially in this battle of the backups matchup here. Just give me points and I'll take them.
Interesting note, Carson Wentz looks like Prince Harry, famous Minnesota product Prince. I don't know. Let's just move on.
When you started saying that there, when you said looks like Prince, I thought that was the end of the sentence. And I'm like, what did I miss here?
Prince Harry, yeah. So a lot of princing going on here.
I knew there was a Minnesota thing going on, but I was like, wait a second here. What?
Song, Two Princes, a song by the Spin Doctors. We might be spin doctoring which of these backup quarterbacks is good, because I look at both of these teams and I go I'll put it this way. The Vikings, I'm looking at that game, both games, to be honest, obviously not the fourth quarter against the Bears, but of the 7 quarters that JJ McCarthy has been bad, I'm watching that going, man, there's a lot of quarterbacks that I think would be really, really good in this offense and give the Vikings a chance to win. Now we get to see one of them, and it's Carson Wentz. And so I don't know that he qualifies. Again, going back to your anybody situation, right? Does he qualify as one of the quarterbacks that would be able to operate this Vikings offense? I would prefer if this was week 15 and Wentz had been sort of in practice for a lot longer. Also, Carson Wentz's general deal is that he panics in the pocket and makes criminally bad decisions, and that provides a more high variance situation for the games. We need to know what's going on with the offensive line, right? Because part of the JJ McCarthy deal is, and speaking of JJ McCarthy, my guy played his first 2 NFL games and his first 2 football games in over a year and a half, bookending becoming a father for the first time, and is, by the way, 22 years old. And I get flustered if I have an appointment in the week, right? And it's it's gonna throw him a week off, and it's this guy's doing 3 things that he's basically feels like he's never done before. So I'm not gonna beat up JJ McCarthy so bad. I also don't mind if maybe the ankle is a thing where it could have played, but dude could use a couple weeks to kind of just chill. And if the whole point of the JJ McCarthy era, if you will, or the start of it, is to maximize the value of JJ McCarthy over the length of JJ McCarthy, then I get it, right? It might not be all about winning in Minnesota this year. Now, this game, they're going to feel like they need to win because they just lost they just lost in week 2, a game that they were favored in, right? And this era of the NFL, favorites don't often lose that much, right? We've had 2 that were a field goal favorite lose all season long. Chiefs in week 1, Vikings in week 2. So all that is to say, what's the story with Jake Browning? He's the guy who's been in the offense for an extended period of time. And so when Burrow gets hurt, I go, okay, it's not going to be as high flying, freewheeling. The ceiling is certainly not there, right? And so when we talk about the range, right, the concept of the range, and we go, okay, the Bengals range to me was 50 to 65 with Joe Burrow. So there are going to be 65 type of days, right? The good stuff for Cincinnati. And that will keep them in a lot of games with some good teams. That will win them a few games against some other pretty good teams. And, they're probably going to dominate a few bad teams along the way. So where do the Bengals fit with Jake Browning into that rating? Well, their current rating as 3-point underdogs to Carson Wentz and the Vikings, who were already getting downgraded off their performance last week, is 43 out of 100. So they've blown through the bottom of the rating. So I don't think that Jake Browning can bring them to 65. I don't think they can play at a 60 level. But as we saw when he came in last week with no practice or anything like that. He comes in and he plays pretty well, and I would say that the Bengals played like a slightly above average team.
Yeah.
So I think 43 is a really low rating for a player who can, has weapons and can run an offense that he's been in for 3 years? Because the last we saw Browning really was not last season. It was 2 seasons ago when he was in the lineup for a really long time. Played a ton in college at Washington. The guy has been in the mix. And so, yeah, the high end is not there for the Bengals, but I don't think there's going to be as much of a drop off. Whereas I don't think there's going to be any drop off for the Vikings, but there's also a possibility that the Vikings just aren't very good.
Fair.
So that's tricky.
Fair enough. Do you know what else is tricky? I'm going to do something that I don't know if I've ever done on this podcast before, because it was like really bothering me during this discussion that we just had. I'm going back a pick, and I'm changing my Saints pick to the Seahawks. Have I ever done that before on this pod?
I don't know. We have never gone back in time. We're time machining this bleep out here.
I don't know how I'll put this in the description. I don't know how this is gonna work. But while we were just discussing that, as we moved on and I finished with the intro to that last game, I was like, wait a second. I was just having visions of Spencer Rattler in Seattle trying to get the play in, and his head's
If I told you they scored 6 points, you'd be like, yeah, no, I do see that. I do picture that.
I guess remind me whenever I post this pod that I got to make a special note to make sure that he really followed through on the Saints Seahawks.
Shall, I'd love to tell you that I'm absolutely going to remind you, but I am absolutely not going to remind you. You're on your own for this, my friend. You're so on your own.
I don't know if I've ever done that before. I don't think so. In the 6 years, I don't think we've ever done that. But shout to the people. No, I was gonna say, shout to the people who have listened to this the whole way through that are just like, what is happening?
Yeah, off the rails in a new way. It's gone off the rails before. I'll tell you what, I'll go even further back, and I'll be like, hey, remember that Denver plus 2.5 teaser leg up to 8.5? Okay. What's wrong with Seattle down to minus 1.5 to be the second leg of that teaser leg?
Ooh, here we go. Hey, we're just hey, shout to the people in their cars right now on their commute that are listening to the full pod. They're like, all right. We like this.
The Saints game broke the space and time continuum because not only did you go back to change the pick there, and we went back to do a tease, I also in that discussion sent people to the Twitter feed to try to decipher what I was talking about vis-a-vis the Seahawks and their potential for winning this game. So people have to go backwards and other places forwards in time. So it's a back to the future situation.
It's like the Inception edition of the Clutch Picks podcast this week. Inception. Which way are we going here? Well, I can tell you the next place we're going, and we're going to Washington as the Commanders are 3.5 point favorites. I had to double check. Hold on. What was the last game we were just talking about here? But the Commanders, 3.5 point favorites as they host the Raiders. Raiders on a short week. Hughes, who will be under center for the Washington Commanders? Jane Daniels dealing with, I think it's a knee injury. Is it going to be Marcus Mariota? We don't know. I can't really spend a lot of time putting into this because here's the thing. At plus 3.5, cool. I'd take the Raiders, but again, I'd like to know who they're going against.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the quarterback for the Commanders? Because I don't know if you paid attention to last season, but having Jaden Daniels and not having Jaden Daniels, kind of a big deal. So I would advise anyone here to wait until you find out who will be the quarterback before making a pick in this game. But I'm going to take the points if right now my understanding is that this could be Marcus Mariota.
So what you guys are going to want to know about the Miami-Buffalo game is... No, sorry, we're not going back. We're not going back to that.
Thursday night football. Wait,
Thursday night. What? Oh, guys, please. Yeah, so obviously trying to figure out what the line is supposed to be here is really important, while also understanding that Geno Smith could look god-awful, or he could look great, and we've already seen that twice, or once each over the course of the first 2 games this season. So it's I don't know what the line is supposed to be because I don't know what the Raiders are supposed to be. Forget
For
even
sure.
getting to the point where the Commanders are. Put it this way, right? Look ahead line 7.5. That has the Commanders rated, as an above average team, which is like where they've been rated much, of the season. Obviously, they get that week 1 win. So if you kind of, think of the Commanders as about like a 55 out of 100, right? Like kind of on the brink of being certainly a playoff team, but kind of a contender. That only really gets you to 5.5. So like I'm looking at that look ahead line going like, what was going on there? And like why was I not like jumping on like maxing out and like burning an account on the Raiders at plus 7.5? And then of course Jaden Daniels gets hurt, and so that line should come down, and of course it does, right? And so now we're in like the below average 48 type of range for the Commanders here. But again, I don't know where I'm supposed to move the Raiders up, down, left, right. Who knows? Because that performance on Monday night from Geno Smith, where the Chargers were openly inviting the Raiders to backdoor cover that game, like going for it on 4th down with a botched like deal to Darius Davis, and then the rookie Hampton fumbling the ball, and it's just like that. Just get a touchdown. Raiders,
Yeah.
just get a touchdown, and then like let's do the thing where the cover is literally on the 2-point conversion, which is like my favorite cover thing because it's like the most 50-50 play you can have, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that's perfect for a point spread. And even the Raiders were like, no, we're just gonna lose this thing by 11, like, and just who cares? And it's like, well, I do. I care.
Yeah.
So man, this game is a total mess. If you look at it and you go, okay, like Marcus Mariota can play and keep the Commanders as an above average team, even at -3.5, like that's probably decent value. If you also go off of the 49ers thing last week, where it was, looks like it's going to be quarterback
Mhm.
X, and then it was confirmed and the line went down even further.
Yeah.
There's a world in which this becomes Washington -3. It's kind of the
Mhm.
exact same
Definitely.
thing, right?
Yeah.
And so at that point, I'm like, well, I'm not betting Commanders -3.5 on the idea of Mariota playing. And then obviously, listen, if Daniels plays, the line's going to go back up, and even -3.5 is a good number, right? So it's
Mhm.
just like, you kind of again have to read the tea leaves, sort of hear about what people are saying, and is it like maybe just kind of cool that Mariota plays 1 week, and in a game that is a non-conference game, if you will, where Washington has to play. I'm just looking this up really quickly. They go to Atlanta next week. Why would you play him this week?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
give Mariota a chance to play. So I don't know. I just look at it and I go like, there's so much movement here, and I think there's a possibility that he doesn't play and that this line drops another half point, because that's just the way that the market treats this, as if it wasn't already a thing that most people already kind of could see coming, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely a weird one for sure, and definitely one
Super
to
weird.
stick to the social medias as might be having multiple picks I'm updating here other than
That's right.
the Saints Seahawks to make sure people know which side I'm on here. But a lot of quarterback information to be had as we get closer to Sunday's action. As
Yep.
we keep it moving, though, here we got the Falcons on the road as 5.5-point favorites in Carolina to take on the Panthers. And I got to say something here. Okay.
Do it. Say something.
Podcast, right? So I probably should. 5.5 points on the road after watching what that Falcons offense looked like last week is a tough, tough go. But this is kind of like the Panthers, talking about the Panthers, talking about the
Yeah.
Saints here, where it's like, I don't know what's really going on with these teams. Bryce Young, he last year down the stretch, Bryce Young looked great. And then all of a sudden now, like, what happened? Like that guy doesn't really seem to be there. And
Yeah.
it's tough to understand, much like you watch the Falcons, and it was tough to understand how they couldn't put more points on the board,
Yeah.
convert some touchdowns last week. So I don't
No.
really know what's going on here, but I do know that if you're going to give me 5.5 points with the home team in a
Yeah.
divisional matchup,
Yeah.
that's where I'm going to lean. That's where I'm going to lean to start it out. And Michael Penix looked good in week 1, not so much in week 2. Was that more about Minnesota's defense? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Chris Collinsworth certainly likes Michael Penix a lot. Just drooling
Who
over him.
doesn't Chris Collinsworth like?
I know. And you know what? I like Chris Collinsworth. So what does that say about me? Carolina was a 1.5 point favorite in the look-ahead line in this game.
Wow.
Yeah, 1 week's results. Where, by the way,
Jeez.
they covered the point spread. Again, this is how disgusting this whole operation is. Like this whole
Wow.
betting on the point spread in the NFL deal is that they can cover the game, and we
Yeah.
can go from like them being a tiny favorite here to 5.5. Now, again, part of that is the Falcons winning and doing so relatively comfortably. But like you said, they didn't score a touchdown that wasn't literally a red carpet rollout, right? Like they intentionally let them score the one touchdown that the Falcons
Mhm.
got in that game. So I'm with you. I'm like, you got to take the Panthers, but like, how many times do we got to do this? And like, maybe we have to wait till week 9 for the Panthers to decide to play. And by the way, like the Panthers lost 2 offensive linemen. My question there would be, listen, the Panthers had a really good offensive line last year. It wasn't the offensive line's fault as to why they were bad. It's probably why they were eventually good. That being said, if I told you like Austin Corbett is not going to play in this game, like you'd probably be like, I don't know, can Austin Corbett's backup do about the same thing in one game as Austin
Yeah.
Corbett? And my answer would be like, yeah, probably. So, like that's why the line has gone up the way that it has, right? The results from last week and the 2 injuries to an offensive lineman. Maybe they have shorter offensive linemen, which would be nice for Bryce Young because man, does it look like he's trying so hard to look over the offensive line. Um, yeah, tough scene in this game, man. Like rock hard place us. Falcons minus 5.5 on the road. Like, nah, I'm not doing that. Maybe we end up just kind of waiting this out and we get a 6 somewhere for Carolina, and they play
Yeah.
just one of those games where both teams just running the ball back and forth on each other, and the clock is like really ticking down. Maybe it goes to overtime. Who knows? But yeah, like +6 would be where I would want, or where I'd be willing to take Carolina. And there really isn't a circumstance where I'd be willing to take the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, and the other interesting part here when we talk about points mattering so much is we'll talk kickers, which super frustrating. But the Falcons essentially having
The worst.
another kicker like
Yeah.
competition this week
Right.
where
Yeah.
Sunway Koo lost his job
Anyway,
during the
yeah.
week last week, and then Romo did okay during the game, but then he's back on the practice roster to try to win it again. It's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Anyways.
And then Tony Romo Jr. is out there making kicks. And like, could he just absolutely stink this week? Yeah, of course he could. This is stupid. This kicker situation is stupid, except for Brandon Aubrey, who is my golden god.
Yes. Speaking of golden gods, though, Sunday Night Football, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I was gonna say Travis Kelce, but after that, those suit shorts that he was rocking, and the whole Taylor Swift. Did you see the wall, by the way, that Taylor Swift? I'm assuming it was Taylor Swift that came out. So the entry into the stadium, and I guess to where the suites are.
Right.
We are assuming it was Taylor Swift because what we saw come out was this big black wall that they pushed out first, and then it unfolds and it becomes this like 10-foot wide wall. And then we're assuming someone's on the other side of said wall as the wall moves down the hallway. So the cameras can't see who's on the other side. It's like, really? This is what we're doing? Like, what is happening? Complete insanity. Did you see this video? Do you know what you're talking about?
I don't. I mean, you described it well enough that I understand it, but she's never been one to not just strut on in. So, like, what's new about all this?
No idea. That was just weird. And we're assuming it was Taylor Swift behind that, right? Like, we don't know. There wasn't confirmation. We know she was in KC, but like, I don't know. That was just weird AF. Anyways, I say all that stage. Maybe she's the golden child, or what did you say? The golden child? Is that what you said? Yeah.
He's my golden god. Maybe
golden god. Maybe she's the golden god. Yes.
I think you were right the first time, Shell.
It's Mahomes?
No, maybe she's with
the
golden child. Oh. Starting rumors much?
You thought you guys were just coming here for football picks, huh?
Yeah.
How about that? Is there odds on? There's got to be odds somewhere on the deep
dark web.
There's got to be odds somewhere about a pregnancy in 2026, right? Anyway,
I didn't say pregnancy. He said it.
before we run out of time here, maybe we'll talk about the actual Sunday nighter. It's completely off the rails, and I blame myself here. The Chiefs, 6-point favorites on the road in New York to take on the Giants, and this was 5.5 last night when I first made this, and then I saw the updated odds this morning, and the Chiefs now 6-point favorites. Against Russell Wilson and his 450 yards of passing last week, the NFL's leading passer, Russell Wilson, that is, until he threw that horrible pick at the end of the game, which I was quite happy to see. And I did try to throw out a super jinx of being like, Russ, we need a pick. We need a fumble, Russ. We need something. And then he threw that terrible pick. It was great.
I was out on the streets, like, apologizing to people. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, this is like, who saw this coming? Like, I wasn't even reverse jinxing it either. Like, when I reverse jinx, like, it. That thing was done, because I was like, there is no way they make a play. And it's like, that's what made the whole other 11 bombs that he just kind of threw down the field so infuriating. You're like, the Russell Wilson I know gets intercepted on any one of these. Yes. Any one of these is going to be jam done for the Giants. And so it was like, literally, he took the last possible exit to Lost Town for us to be able to win that, with finally throwing that interception. So, is he going to be able to get...
You can't do that again against the Chiefs. Not a chance. Not a chance against Spags. I know this line is screaming for the home dogs, and I get it, but I don't trust Russell to do that yet again. And I think the Chiefs, just stink bomb this game and figure out a way. Like, what's this line if Travis Kelce catches that pass and it's a touchdown and they win against the Eagles? Do you know what I mean? Like, how much does that change our perception of this week's whole narrative of the Chiefs are done? Are the Chiefs done? Is the season over? Is their window closed? All that jazz.
Yeah, I agree with the thought process, right? Like, the tiny thing that went the wrong way, changing the sort of axis of the universe and like what we would think and what we'd be willing to bet and so on and so forth. My problem with it, though, Shell, is if like one of our tenets might be a stretch, but one of our things going into this season is that like Travis Kelce is washed.
No, for sure. I'm there. But he still just had to catch a pass.
I know. But the type of thing that you do when you're washed is you drop a pass that like wasn't perfect, but like was a catch that you make in your prime when you are not washed, right? And when you're not washed, you get out of the way of Xavier Worthy. And so like it's not going to be obvious that he probably should have retired after last year. It's going to be, he's out there, he's making some plays, but the difficult stuff, like the rest of us, the difficult stuff becomes more difficult.
All I'm saying, though, is that even if he just dropped the ball, even if he just dropped the pass and it doesn't get intercepted and taken the other way, even if he just drops it.
I agree with you. The concept is absolutely correct. I just go like, yes, but if the thing was that we had to be looking out, right? If the goblin around the corner was Travis Kelce is going to screw this up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and it does, then we cannot be surprised, and we kind of actually have to assume that he might screw it up again this week. Now, again, maybe not in as drastic of a fashion, and maybe it's not a win-loss screw up. But when you're asking this team that has otherwise not looked particularly good to cover a point spread on the road by 6, that's asking a lot when, again, we're waiting for like the good players to come back to help Patrick Mahomes, who is literally out here leading the team in rushing, taking touchdowns in on his own because nobody can get open. This was a bad red zone offense team last year until they started deploying Xavier Worthy. And, it's like enough is enough here. Now, again, the market has downgraded the Chiefs. So you go, okay, like normally that becomes profitable when the market downgrades the Chiefs. Didn't last week, right? And they haven't really changed it off of last week's downgrade, which made them a home underdog. And by the way, they also haven't moved the Giants up which is so funny because like we talked about how the Cowboys won the game and got moved down pretty significantly from a rating perspective, and the Giants didn't move up. It was literally everybody is like, yeah, Cowboys down. No credit to Russell Wilson, no credit to the Giants. It's entirely a Cowboys problem, right? It's like it's a you problem, Dallas. This is a you problem. So I'm at least willing to hypothesize that the Giants had something to do with playing well against the Cowboys. And if that's the case, and the Chiefs haven't been downgraded off of another loss, then there, by definition, has to be value on the Giants. The big thing, for all of the other nonsense and rumors that we just made up about pregnancies, the only thing that really matters to me in this game is if Andrew Thomas, the left tackle for the New York Giants, is going to be able to play in this game, which allegedly he was close last week to being able to return and make his season debut. And then all we watched for the first half is that, especially that first drive, was the left tackle on the Giants just taking penalties left, right, and center. And it's like, if that isn't the most obvious reason, and it's part of the reason why we were on the Cowboys in Survivor, because again, we don't want anything to do with the Giants unless Andrew Thomas is healthy and playing. Again, speaking of things to keep your eye on, even if he doesn't, there's value on the Giants as far as actually clicking on the bet. Andrew Thomas needs to play for me to be able to officially do that, and maybe even think that the Giants have a chance to convert the upset this week.
Yeah, no, it'll be an interesting one as the Giants and the Russell Westbrook. Wow,
we Russell are coming Wilson. Up with some obscure names because you know what, folks. Speaking of six, we weren't just born 6 years ago. We old, okay? Like we are old, and we say names from other sports and other whatever, and it's just a train wreck out here. But otherwise, we have a really great time, and I hope people enjoy it.
I apologize because I love Russell Westbrook, and I apologize for calling him Russell Wilson. You know what I mean?
You do love Russell Westbrook.
I do. Still doesn't have a team somehow, but we'll figure it out. Monday Night Football, we'll figure that out as the Lions are in Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Ravens 4.5-point favorites at home. This is what a Monday Night Football matchup should be, a big boy matchup, and I love it. There's a lot of things going on here, though. I think the Lions are still really good. We talked about that after last week, heading into last week's game against the Bears, in terms of the Lions showing, hey, we're okay. Everyone was worried after week 1. Nope, everything's all right.
Yeah.
So I'd like to take the points here. But what makes me nervous is they're coming off a huge, huge win. All the vibes. You got your man's Jared Goff going outside in Baltimore versus a Ravens team who we discuss all the time. They're ready for these prime time matchups, especially at home.
True.
It's kind of a thing they show up for. But I still don't want to lay 4.5 points more than a field goal against another team that I think is really good.
Yeah.
I'm on the Lions.
This is kind of the fair. Like this is kind of the inverse of the Browns thing, right? Like if I have to be on, quote unquote, have to be on the Browns conceptually this week because of the box score, the misleading box score that was last week's Browns-Ravens game, I have to also have, my sort of spidey sense up here about the Ravens having less than 300 yards against the Browns last week at home.
Yeah.
And so, right, those things are all kind of tied together. And by the way, if you want to keep tying stuff together, the Ravens offense looked really great against the Buffalo Bills, which means I got to have some question marks about the Buffalo Bills defense. And that brings us back to Thursday, because I know everybody wants to go back to Thursday to talk more about that game. No, I'm just kidding. This was 6 on open, not even just look ahead. Look ahead was 3.5, but this was 6 on open. And it's just like, I was slow to it, man. I don't know what I was. It was one of those where it was so shocking that it paralyzed me. Where it was like I didn't immediately jump on. I was like, "Who died? Like, what's going on? Can we check on Jared Goff? You know what I mean? Like this. Like there has to be something going on here, and obviously not, because it has since not only come off of 6 down to 5.5, down to 5 to 4.5. There might be still some 5s out there out on the streets, but again, not necessarily a key number. So yeah, I mean, anything higher than 3, I think I'm still into, because again, I don't fully trust the Ravens defense against a legitimate passing defense. and the Lions are a legitimate passing defense. This isn't a game played in cold weather, so people can't do the Jared Goff quote unquote deal about how he's not good in cold weather. The Jared Goff and this passing offense can take advantage of the Ravens in a way that unfortunately Joe Flacco necessarily couldn't. And again, it's kind of a sign that Quinshon Judkins can just roll up and average 6 yards a carry on the ground against the Ravens defense after, James Cook had a pretty good game. Josh Allen had a pretty good game. So, there's still a lot to be desired here with the Ravens defense. Obviously, it's terrifying to go up against Lamar Jackson in prime time. That's our guy. But most of the time, these prime time games are so good from a matchup perspective that it's usually kind of around a 3-point line for the Ravens, right? Because it's against the Bills or the Chiefs or on the road at Houston on Christmas or some stuff like that. And you're just we're just asking them to win by a relatively respectable margin. We're asking them to beat a pretty good Lions team. Again, people were throwing out babies with bathwaters last week, and all of a sudden the Lions are how we just hammer teams at home sometimes? We're just going to do that because we're a little bit annoyed here. I don't know that they hammer the Ravens necessarily, but I think they got a chance to win this game. Right? Definitely. This feels a lot like, this is a deep pull maybe for some people, but a Thursday nighter last year where it was Bengals and the Ravens, and it came down to, a 2-point conversion attempt or a 4th down where Joe Burrow got drilled in the face, nobody called it, and he just missed the throw to, I think it was Tanner Hudson or some, random tight end, and it was just the Ravens are awesome, it's prime time, it's in Baltimore, but the defense couldn't hold up against a good passing offense. And I think that's a possibility here as well, in the same way that it was a very big possibility and came to fruition against the Bills in that first game of the season.
Yeah, super interesting one for sure. A big boy matchup and a great way to end week 3 of the NFL season. But as mentioned, there'll be a lot more information from you. And where can the people find all that information before week 3 gets underway and as it continues?
Yeah, we'll have pictures of the sonogram on at MRussAuthentic on Twitter. Just blatant at that point. Yeah, man, the Substack, just go to substack.com or a Substack app and just type in Matt Russell, The Window, Matt Russell Sports Betting, The Window Sports Betting. You search things before. But yeah, at MRussAuthentic on Twitter is going to get you where you need to go as far as stuff that's also available on Yahoo Sports, which is also the thing that I might have been talking about when it came to the Seattle Seahawks New Orleans Saints game. So maybe pinpoint that when it comes to that.
Yeah. Lots going on, lots of info out there for you that you can be informed before you make your picks this week in the NFL. I want to shout out again all our new listeners as things have been going pretty well so far, it seems, on the YouTube and, of course, the audio pods as well. So keep liking and subscribing wherever you get your podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. Again, follow, and subscribe wherever you get this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. As I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is a Clutch Picks Sports Betting Podcast. As always, unpolished and very unapologetic for that, especially if you listen to this episode. You just know exactly how unpolished and unapologetic we will be each and every week. Until next time, see ya.